So let's begin with the second in the series of the panel discussions on reimaging entrepreneurship in post-COVID era, challenges and opportunities, reboot, reform, research. On behalf of the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all our participants, dignitaries, and our highly esteemed panelists for sparing their valuable time for this interaction with the members of IMC. As we begin, may I request Mrs. Paula Mariwala, Chairperson, IMC Startups and Innovation Committee, to present the welcome address. Over to you, Mrs. Mariwala.
Thank you, Selby. And warm welcome to all of you once again on behalf of IMC, and particularly on behalf of our committee, which is a newly constituted, or rather a youngly constituted committee on startups and innovation. As Selby said, the topic of reimagining entrepreneurship in these times is very, very relevant today. It's not just that the world is going to change completely with COVID. It's going to actually evolve. It's going to create new opportunities. Of course, as we all are aware, we are dealing with lots of challenges. But as we have seen in the last 5 months, we have, as a country, as a world, as a humanity, we have tried to come together to solve very important issues in front of us, whether it's healthcare, or whether it is the economy, or whether it's creating new jobs or surviving in this world which has now taken us away from interpersonal interactions, at least for the time being. So the underlying theme, I think, in today's times is collaboration. And when one talks about entrepreneurship, I think to succeed as an entrepreneur, to be a successful innovator, what one needs most, of course, we need ideas. We need a good team to go forward with. But what is really the key to making this successful is collaboration. And never has it been so important than in today's times, where the whole world is joining hands to address the issues that have come up because of the pandemic, whether it is innovations in health, in vaccines, in managing various issues which have come up. So I think it's a very opportune time to address this. We've also seen very many changes in our own country during this time. We've seen how the lockdown has impacted a large section of people who had to really even walk to their homes because it was difficult for them to survive. And that created a humanitarian crisis. We have seen how people have come together to help these, as a civil society as well as the government. And we have seen how technology has enabled a lot of different innovations that we could not think of. We at IMC never had so many online seminars, and I think this is definitely a result of digital transformation that is being thrust into all our lives. Having said that, I think on today's theme, we are looking at entrepreneurship and innovation today in a very different light. Like I said, today is the time to collaborate, and we are talking about different types of partnerships. I think I've been involved in the ecosystem of startups and entrepreneurship for the last about 2 decades in India and in the Bay Area, which is we call the birthplace of startups. What is the piece in our ecosystem in India is what I spoke about, which is collaboration between different parts of our society, the government, the academia, the industry, and the young people all have to come together for a really thriving ecosystem. We've had some missing pieces. We've done well as an entrepreneurial country where we have been fantastic traders, we have been fantastic business people. We also innovate based on the limited resources we have. But I think what we've missed out on is truly collaborating between academia and industry, between the government and industry, to empower original thought, to empower original innovations. And if you look at the last few decades, India has not really given original products or technologies to the world at large. We've been very good in information technology, but we've largely solved problems of others. We have not pioneered solutions. We've not pioneered technologies. And I think this has been because we've been either too protectionist, or we have just sort of jumped the gun and adopted certain technologies and have tried to adopt them, apply them to our country. So I think every decade, every era had its own paradigm, and India as a developing country had to sort of do a little bit of catch up. But I think time has come now to really invest alongside government and academia into pioneering technologies, into pioneering solutions, which we can take out to the world. Some of them which we are going to talk about today, things like quantum computing, things like advanced solutions in cybersecurity and advanced telecom solutions, which will lay the foundation for new technologies to evolve. I think that's where we need to also focus. While we've been very good at addressing technology-enabled products and companies, we now have one of the largest population using e-commerce, for example, or even educational technology, edtech. We are doing so much with that technology. We've pioneered finance solutions for payments and so on. So we have pioneered technology-enabled solution. But what is sort of missed out, what we've missed out is the pioneering technologies itself. One sector which comes to my mind is that of space technologies, where ISRO and Department of Space, Department of Defense, the government, along with several of its institutions, has pioneered the whole paradigm shift in how satellites are made and launched. And we've come up with one of the most innovative and inexpensive solutions for that. And that's a classic example of when everybody comes together, including the private sector, how we can innovate and bring technology to the forefront for what is required by our country, by the community at large, whether here or global. So I think those are some of the things we will touch upon today. We have a very esteemed panel, and I would really like from all of you to hear how entrepreneurs can really engage in these deep technology initiatives, in the Make in India initiatives, the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiatives that the government is trying to push. And one thing I would really like to ask on behalf of all of us who are entrepreneurs or investors to the government is, whenever there have been very big announced or big initiatives launched, with all good intent, we don't see it translate and taken forward. How do we ensure that, that this time around, and the timing is very right, we build upon these announcements which have come from the government and not let it pass? We all need to, like I said, work together and really make sure that the funds that the government is committing, the intent of the government, really translate into something that we as Indians can be proud of. We are still a minuscule percentage of manufacturing in the world. We have hardly contributed anything into pioneering technologies. We contribute to being parts of teams, but really besides a few examples, we've not done enough. I think as a nation, we are very proud of our own talent and our own abilities. We need to come together and work on that. And I'm happy to see some of the pioneers here today with us who will touch upon this. We have huge opportunities in leading the way in 5G, 6G, which has not really happened across the world yet. We have strong companies in that domain. Cybersecurity is a very, very big issue, needs to be addressed with different context. And data is a complex issue. We are all sort of wondering how data privacy can be protected, and we can take advantage of all the data that is available and build on it, have machine learning, have AI, to make sure we use this for the betterment of humanity and yet keep the fundamental rights of citizens intact. So these are complex issues, very many opportunities, and very, very excited to work with various parts of the government industries, entrepreneurs, and institutions at large to create a platform which can build a new India, Atmanirbhar India. So over to you, I think, Mr. Goenka, to take this esteemed for discussion forward with this esteemed panel. Thank you again and welcome on behalf of IMC.
Thank you, Mrs. Mariwala. Without much ado, let's begin with the second panel discussion in the series on emerging opportunities through government policy changes and initiatives, vocal for local, quantum computing, data sovereignty, and cybersecurity 5G or 6G. To initiate the discussion, I welcome our moderator of the panel, Mr. Vineet Goenka, Secretary, Center for Knowledge Sovereignty, whose expertise lies in various fields, in particular information technology, transportation and infrastructure, and agriculture. He is a member of the Governing Council of CRIS, Center for Railway Information Systems, and organization under the Ministry of an organization under the Ministry of Railways, Government of India, and a member of the IT Task Force in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and Shipping, Government of India. He has authored the book Data Sovereignty, The Pursuit of Supremacy, which was apparently released in an IMC event. Over to you, Mr. Goenka.
Thank you. And I welcome everybody once again in this reimaging entrepreneurship in the post-COVID era. Nicely put by Ms. Mariwal. We have opportunities, we have challenges, and we have got very good panels here. So we will discuss over the next 1 hour. What I would be doing is inviting one of the speakers, introduce him in 1 or 2 minutes, and then the speaker will speak for 6 or 7 minutes. At the end of the 5 minutes, I would remind each speaker so that he can wind up in 2 or 3 minutes, so that we can spend 25-30 minutes in the first opening remark of the speaker, and then we would like to take some questions if they are there, or maybe there can be a second round or third round. So speakers should not mind when I say it's 5 minutes, because that's the only way, because generally when you speak you may not be able to see the clock, and points can be kept across. And it gives me an enormous what do you say, happiness that we are sitting here on the eve of the 15th August, when we want to change the country's future by taking the economical route, discussing opportunities, also discussing policy matters which we would like to enlighten each other, and then take it up with the relevant departments, ministries if required. And who better than somebody whom I have worked together. She has been a fantastic person. She led the organization from FERD. Mrs. Vandana Nanda, Managing Director of CRIS, former Managing Director of CRIS, and under her stewardship, CRIS has done various good activities. It's changed, and as you all know, CRIS is the IT arm of Indian Railways, and Indian Railways caters to the most the biggest size of the population in this country. It serves to the poorest of the poor and the richest of the richest is concerned by Indian Railways. Somebody supplies, somebody uses railways, and her job was to take care of every citizen in this. Can I request Mrs. Vandana Nandaji to come and inaugurate? Vandana ji, it is 4:18 right now, so at 4:23, I would remind you for the 5 minutes. Vandana ji, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Vineet ji. And good evening to all present and the esteemed panelists. I don't know what is more intimidating, to face a responsive, encouraging or audience, or to not be able to see anyone at all. These are really, really unimaginable, strange times where we cannot meet each other, and yet we are connected to over hundreds across the world. I mean, it's the first in humankind, in the history of humankind, that we are so connected, and it's all thanks to IT. And this boon is what we should be looking at and expanding. I thank IMC for considering this particular topic for their discussion on reimaging entrepreneurship in post-COVID era, the challenges and opportunities. Each subtitle of this topic today has immense potential for creating opportunities, and with government giving the lead with Atmanirbhar and Make in India, it is for all of people, all the industry and the young brains out here to utilize it and come forward to work, to kind of search within, because India is a very vast country with a lot of opportunities. You just have to kind of search for them. Now, like in the budget 2020, it has announced a spend of 8,000 crores over the next 5 years for a national mission on quantum technology. Like you rightly said, it was said that we should know where the government is going to spend and how it is going to spend. I think we need to have a look at the various portals which the government has put up and go to them and search out and ask questions at the relevant ends. Mr. Vinitji is here to help also for that, to how we will be able to spend this. And for India to emerge as a leader in quantum technology in the next 5 years, we need everyone's participation here. And all the brains here should get together, like collaborate, as was said by the previous speaker. We have to collaborate with the government, with academia to come forward in this particular field. And with its huge numbers, India, all the digitization which is happening in India has tremendously created a huge data bank, and we need to utilize the data which we have to facilitate analysis, to be able to facilitate the government to do its various projects. But for that, we need a certain government policy as to which data can be utilized and which cannot be made public. That is still in the pipeline, and that needs to be expedited so that we know what should be able, that the entrepreneurs or whoever wants to do that in the industry can utilize. When I was in CRIS and the Digital India was given a push, I was met by a whole lot of CEOs of big and small companies, and also all the way from US. And the ones from US only wanted data to run the algorithms so that they could experiment with certain data analytics which they could do. And the bigger companies over here in the country, like said earlier, they came up with probably very good, all kinds of solutions for ticketing. Now, it was very difficult for me to tell them, look, we have a ticketing solution up and running. We are booking, almost the number of the population of Australia on a daily basis to run from one end of the country to the other. We don't need, there is no urgency to do a ticketing change in the ticketing program. But what we would have really appreciated is if you could come along with some add-ons, some value additions to the program that is up and running. And that is what I ask all the entrepreneurs or whoever is listening to the industry here, that if the government is running a program, don't try to revamp it or change it. If there are certain flaws, yes, the government will look at it, but give some add-ons, give some additions, which will be welcomed by the government. By any, you go to any portal of the government, any ministry of the government, you will be able to know what all they are doing. So search for yourself what you can add to it. Now the government has a very good e-marketplace, but that is for its own procurement. And the government has started a thing called e-NAM, e-National Agriculture Market. It's for the farmers to sell their products in different parts of the country wherever they're getting better probably prices. But at the same time, if you could put in a little thought as to how you could help the farmers utilize that e-NAM. Maybe have a kind of a truckers e-marketplace or a transporters e-marketplace, or even a small, those tempos e-marketplace, so that the farmer can, is easy. It's easier for him to send his produce where he wants to, and or to help in his storage or facilitate or packaging, facilitate that. Look at where you can add on. Now, like the government has come up with this really ambitious Atal pension scheme, and it's for the unorganized sector. The pensions are going to be disbursed. But at the same time, if there could be a hand holding of the registration of deaths with the banks disbursing these kind of pensions, there would be a prevention of the leakage, which could probably happen to government revenue. You have to think of these little things, which will take time for the government to come, because government is working with such vast numbers. We have to look at the size which we work with. And looking at this, if I talk about the size, the ticketing solution, which Center for Railway Information offers through IRCTC and through the PRSs also, is there are 5 lakh concurrent users. And the GSTN is now increasing, has understood that they also have to size up. So they have now come up to over 1 lakh concurrent users, and they're aiming at 3 lakhs. So the size in the government matters. And along with the size, these small little programs, if the industry could collaborate, come forward. Software, we are already a software giant, and all of you can, I'm sure, come up with small applications which can help the government add to the existing huge big applications. And like said earlier, yes, we do need to give a lot more attention to hardware, to our, the technology we are importing. We are using all imported goods, and to become Atmanirbhar, to become a giant in overall IT, we need to also have hardware building in place, infrastructure in place, making of it, become a pioneer, like it was said earlier. Now, the thing is that, you would be very surprised to know that the first ticket counters, ticket gates, checking gates were set up in the first metro in the country, which is Calcutta. Calcutta had its first metro and is completely underground so far. And with a little portion above ground, yes, now.
So we have done our first 5 minutes.
Okay. And so the technology for these gates was given by CRIS, but all the subsequent metros have got the gates as well as the technology from abroad. I'm sure the industry can come up with making of the gates, and the technology is already there. Similarly, a pilot project has been done by Indian Railways to have gates within the stations. Now, so many new stations, world-class stations are coming up. That gate technology is an opportunity for all of you to come in for. And, look at it. Again, regarding, within the railways, there's immense scope for all of you to, like I said earlier, please look into the projects which are already on and what all you can add to it. Now, regarding, my previous speaker mentioned, that we have to move towards the new technology of 5G. But 5G is at our doorstep. We are probably already running trials on it. And as you're aware that every such new radio wave technology takes about 5 years to be accepted, to spread, to be up and running. So, okay, we are going to get into 5G now, but let us start doing the R&D for 6G. If we have to become the giants 5 years or 10 years down the line, we have to start doing R&D now. We should be the ones who should pioneer 6G, not anyone else. Let's have a look at it like that. And cybersecurity is something which is actually fallen behind. Today, everybody is working from home. So, and all the data is there on the net. We have to protect it. It is ours, and we just cannot let it go anywhere. And malware prevention, these are things which we have to look at. All the entrepreneurs and the industry should give more attention to cybersecurity today. We have the brains, we have the software to do it. Entrepreneurship was education and everything to do it. Let us kindly put a lot more attention to cybersecurity than to other applications. BharatNet is spreading all over the country. Tomorrow, the villagers, the poor marginal farmers will be having internet on their mobiles. So how are we going to protect them? Today, we get SMSs on our mobiles and otherwise on our emails. Kindly don't pass on this and this information, or such and such malware is going to come on your computers. How is that poor farmer going to be educated on this? It is better to have a cybersecurity feature which does not allow any theft of his identity or his data which can hit him economically. These are avenues which we need to give a lot more attention to, and the government here is pushing it forward, wanting collaboration, wanting add-ons from the industry. So with a thrust on Digital India and Make in India initially, and now Atmanirbhar and Vocal is for local, there's a tremendous facilitation which has been given by the government to the industry, to the startups, to the entrepreneurs, and they have to make full use of this. Yes, the government needs to streamline a little more as to how these benefits are going to reach the end, the ones who want it. But the huge area has been created. Please look for green fields to create any software, collaborate on what is already going on, do value additions to what is already going on. That would be my take on how to help the entrepreneurs look at emerging opportunities. And I thank IMC once again for giving me this invite. And it's been a pleasure to give you my views on it. I hope I'm within time, Mr. Goenka. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course you will. See, last week we were discussing about the opportunities in space, we were opportunities in defense. I thought this week we should start with the customer, the buyer, and who better than Mrs. Vandana Nanda would be in a place to tell us what does India's biggest organization, Indian Railways, wants it. And this particular topic, it excites me a lot because 5G, there are a lot of opportunities. We are going to see days when geospatial is going to play a major role. There will be cybersecurity challenges. There will be other challenges. Yes, rightly said by Ms. Mariwal earlier, that either we stop the gates by being very much concerned and being protectionist, or we opened the floodgates. And rightly said by Mrs. Vandana Nanda that there have been opportunities. I remember once saying, some intelligent person told me that technology cannibalizes technology. So even if some technology is prevalent right now, and you may not see the market right now, but tomorrow there will be market because technology are absolute and there will be business opportunities which will come up. India is going through not only the COVID challenge, but there are many other challenges which are going up and which are influencing the policies. And recently, the policy changes which have been introduced by the central government helps Indian entrepreneur, helps member of IMC, not less than anything else. And who better than Vinod will be in a place to tell us what does Subex do, what are the opportunities are there, and where do we go wrong, or where are the places where we should immediately take help of companies like Subex, so that we don't fall prey to external threats. We may be small, simple case of cyberbullying, or it can be a serious crime of to threat to the democracy because of cyberbullying. I had opportunity to listen to him in 4 roundtables. Believe me, whoever is listening to this conversation is one of the brilliant minds whom I have heard in my last 2 decades. Vinod, over to you. I will request you to be there in 5 minutes. It starts now. It's 4:32 right now. 4:37. I'll remind you.
Thank you, Mr. Goenka. First of all, let me thank IMC for this opportunity and to be a part of this session along with the distinguished panelists. Now, as the speakers mentioned, the post-COVID scenario is going to be very different than what it was before. That's the only thing which we can state with a bit of certainty at this point in time. Now, everywhere the digital push has been going on, but what this COVID scenario has done is that it has cut through and probably saved years when it comes to adoption. Many governments, institutions, private companies, all of them have moved to a digitized mode, much more than what they thought that they could do, probably in decades. So the post-COVID scenario is going to be extremely interesting. And a country like India, where we are at the cusp of an economic growth and leveraging technology, having done the corridors or digital corridor in place, there's a lot of opportunity. So probably I would look at focusing on a few points to start with. What does entrepreneurship mean from an Indian context, looking at globally? And then come to that point Mr. Goenka mentioned about the trust, the elements of trust, which is, I think, the digital trust, which is a very important aspect. The first point that I would want to cover is the opportunity for a value creation through IP. Mrs. Mariwal mentioned regarding the importance of technology. If you look at any country, or for that matter, society, which has been successful, you will find that those countries in the first phase leveraged their natural resources. That's the first phase of development. Then you go through the services, the railways, hospitals, telecom services. Then there is next the progress that one makes with respect to the services thing. And then it moves into the IP, or the intellectual property. You will see that from the value creation, the product companies are much, much more valuable than any other companies put together. If you look at Boeing has got the revenue and profits compared to all the airline companies put together. It's not just about the profit alone, but the impact that it can create. Look at the trillion-dollar companies out there. They're all IP-related things. So I think that where India is today, it is in the right position to start this value creation through intellectual property. So that's the first point. The second aspect is whatever we do with respect to the IP, we should have an aspiration to compete and win globally, because that's the only way for self-reliance from an Indian enterprise perspective, is to compete globally and win. Now, this should be the long-term perspective. It takes a long time for us to create that capability, but it is doable. Like Subex, for instance, in a small niche case, we are the global leader in the space of telecom management. Hello?
Please continue. Somebody spoke in between.
Yeah, sorry. So we have developed the capability over a period of time in a small niche case, and the opportunities for the Indian entrepreneurs to take a very large use cases and compete and win globally, and therefore create a very strong, self-reliant enterprise and ecosystem in our country. The third aspect is the role that the ecosystem plays in consistently creating a success on anything. Let me take the example of the Jamaican runner Usain Bolt. Now, I mean, probably most of us may not know a lot about Jamaica, but if you look at the running scenario, in the sprinters, Jamaica is up there, and they're competing with just about every other nation, US, Germany, and whatnot. How did this happen that a small nation with not so much of resources, suddenly when it comes to sprinting, they are probably they create the most important or the best runners globally. Now that's what the ecosystem is all about. Your ability to create an ecosystem means that you will have a consistent performance from a lot more people, and that's what the ecosystem plays in. And it's very, very important for us to have the right ecosystem created. The next point is with respect to when we look at a post-COVID entrepreneurship opportunity, being an emerging economy, there are a lot of institutional voids that exist in our setup, or for that matter, in any emerging setup, there'll be a lot of institutional voids. Let me give an example of what I mean by institutional voids. Today, if you want to go and see a doctor, now beyond the personal references or your friend told you that you are a good doctor or this is a good doctor, there is no centralized way I can access and find out that these are the best doctors available based on whatever be the consideration. Now that's an institutional void that potentially one can see, and there lies an opportunity that if that void can be created, there is a big business idea there. So in an emerging areas, if you look around, you will find a lot of such institutional voids. Now these institutional voids have been there for a reason, because these are very difficult for us to solve that. And that's an opportunity by leveraging the modern technologies and the right approach. Can you just solve some of these institutional voids? If you look at in the last 1 decade, some of the big industries and the businesses have been created or completely disrupted with this approach of the institutional void. The next aspect is the emergence of AI as a general purpose technology. Now, let me explain what is a general purpose technology. A general purpose technology is whatever a technology which has come into existence and it has made a significant impact in the society. Now, if you go back into history, you'll find that the steam engine was probably if one can recall, the first big technology innovation. Then came about the electricity, then computers, and then probably semiconductor, then internet for the last 2 decades. Now, if you look at each of these general purpose technology, you can imagine how it has completely changed the world and improved the productivity and progress for the nations and the societies at large. I believe that the AI has got the potential to be the next general purpose technology. And this is where I think India has got a golden opportunity for us to really leverage and emerge as a sort of powerhouse when it comes to AI as a general purpose technology, for the reasons that, one, we have a lot of technical minds out there. Just the sheer quantity that we have, if we can leverage, we can create a big impact. The second aspect is that India is so diverse, and therefore whatever the data and the use cases that we can create for solutions for is also very diverse. So all these things, if we can put together and have the right ecosystem, then I think India can emerge as a very significant player in leveraging AI as a general purpose technology and solving big problems. I mean, most of the institutional voids that we are talking about can be addressed very effectively using technology, and that will significantly help that. The last aspect which I will spend is on the digital trust. Now, if you look at anything and everything that we do today with respect to technology, the way last 1 decade has gone, the trust has taken a big time beating. Fake news and whatever you talk about, there's an aspect of trusting the digital economy. And this is an important area that need to be fixed with. Now, the fundamental, if you look at the fundamental aspects of trust, these are things like risk mitigation, security, privacy, identity, confidence in data. So it's important that we bring the digital trust to the center of anything and everything that we do. So when we develop this capability, if we address this with the digital trust, we will ensure that it is sustainable and we will have a significant competitive advantage. Viniji talked about the issues that we have with respect to the cyber and things like that. Digitization, while it is supremely enabling, on the other side is that it is extremely vulnerable. It's two sides of the coin. So that's why I think when we talk about the ecosystem, the collaboration between the government, industry, and academia, we need to ensure that everybody understands digital trust and bring digital trust in the center of it, because as we emerge some of these new technology, it is very, very important for us to have the trust and the comfort that it is generally in the direction of the general societal good and not just with respect to profiteering for one segment or other. So those are my initial thoughts on this subject. And again, thank you again for this opportunity of IMC and for all the panelists and all the delegates who have attended it. Thank you, and over to you, Goenkaji.
Well, when Mr. Vinod speaks, all pay attention, and so I also overshot 2-3 minutes, and you will all have to forgive me for that. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Invest India, Startup India, and also Maharashtra State University Society who supported this event, apart from Million Minds, CKS, who have joined IMC to bring this program in front of you. Post these two speakers who has set the ball rolling, I would like to invite Suresh Shankar. And Suresh Shankar is a founder and CEO of Cran Data, artificial intelligence, big data analytics evangelist. He's also an entrepreneur. He's an innovator. He started his first venture, Red Pill Analytics, in the year 2000 in Singapore. And now he has started his second venture. This is Cran Data, which also have very, very different revolutionary ideas. He has brought in different paradigm in the entire business. I would request Suresh to come, put forward what are the opportunities which he sees, and how do we take advantage of the current challenges which are there in the world, also in the economy here, and how do we generate more opportunities for our people, economical gains for our people, member of the IMC, and also to the larger society. Suresh.
Thank you very much, Vineet, and thank you, IMC, for inviting me. So first of all, I think uniquely in this meeting, I am sitting in Singapore. I live in Singapore. I've been here 23 years. My first startup, Red Pill Analytics, was a company that was started when the word analytics wasn't even a thing. It ended up with IBM acquiring us, which is a nice story. And then I started Crayon Data, and it's a very funny company. And I think why I say very funny is that it goes against the principles of all this sovereignty that we're talking about. And let me give you an example. Today, I have about 110 people employed in India, or about 125 worldwide. And those 110 people are handling the data and the AI for the largest bank in Myanmar, one of the largest credit card issuers in the world, the largest credit card issuer in Brazil. We've done some work for the largest airline in the world. Of course, after COVID, they didn't want to do anything. I mean, there's nobody to do anything with. We've profiled over 125 million customers for these companies. We've generated, $1 billion of value on an annualized basis. And Vandana we can help you. We don't need to tell you it's in your ticketing system. We'll just help you profile your customers and like, you know, serve them better. But jokes apart, I think the point I'm trying to make, and I think is this thing is that I am only equipped to talk not about all the things that are going on in this seminar, but I'll talk to you about data and I'll talk to you a little bit about entrepreneurship. So let me talk a little bit about data, because the one thing that I can say I know something about, right? If you look at data, there are two ways you look at it, right? There's a consumer and there's a company, there's an enterprise. I have a relationship between a consumer and enterprise, and you're exchanging data. Now, as you all know, you have companies like Facebook, Google, etc., who are giving you things for free, and they're exploiting your data in return. And most consumers are willing to make that trade-off. Most consumers don't want restrictions on the fact that, you know, I'm able to do things cross-border, I'm able to buy, I'm able to access everything anywhere in the world, and I'm able to kind of buy anything that I want, to interact with anybody globally. I'm interacting with you, I'm sitting in another country. There's a second relationship between citizens and a government, because today increasingly that's becoming another big issue in data. I mean, we all know that we are all asked to do contact tracing applications. There are cameras everywhere. When China spies on its citizens, everybody spies on everybody with their data. The fact is it's true, and you know, whether you like it or not, it's the reality. And there is a certain thing in that, right? I mean, citizens need to recognize that they have a certain responsibility to the governments and the countries they live in, and therefore they have a right to collect some data. But yet there is a concomitant responsibility on the part of governments to say, I won't misuse the data. I will use it for the specific purpose for which I collected it. It will largely be anonymized and so on. So if you look at both of these relationships, you know, a citizen and a consumer, sorry, a citizen and a government, a consumer and a company, there is a relationship where today the new currency in the world, they call data the new oil, but I call it the new currency of the world. I give you data, you give me something back in return. You could give it to me for free, you could give it to me for a price. Some companies make the trade-off, like Apple says, I won't charge you money, I won't use your data, but I will charge you a lot of money to sell you the phone. Google says, I'll give you the phone for free, I'll give you everything for free, but I'll use your data and I will literally spy on everything that you do. And the key question in data is always comes about as to who owns the data. And this has always been framed as an issue of a government, a company owning the data. And I'm sorry, I think we're moving to a new world that India needs to wake up to and exploit. And that world is a world where we recognize that I own the data, the consumer and the citizen own the data about themselves. The fact that you're providing me a service, I'm giving you the data, is in return for a service that you're providing. As a citizen, I have a duty to give you some data, and you have a duty as a government to provide me some services. And that relationship should be maintained. Similarly, in the case of a company. And the reason why I say India should wake up to this world, and there's a massive opportunity out here, is that we should not go the China route, where the government simply reserves the right to do anything that it wants with the data. We should not go the US route, where you have a president suddenly waking up and saying, I'm going to ban the most popular app in the country because I just don't like the fact that the data sits somewhere. We should not go the route where we are saying, hey, the server is sitting somewhere, etc., because we have a unique opportunity in India. And we need to be realizing that because of the talent pool, Vinod talked about it, because of the consumer pool, Vandana talked about it, we have the ability to actually say that in this new world, India can be the best country to actually use the amount of data that is being generated in the world, provide services to companies all around the world. And I'm sure the next gentleman, Sunil, will talk about cybersecurity, provide security on that data. We are in a brilliant position to exploit this new world as entrepreneurs, as governments, as companies, large companies, etc. And we should be very careful, because this is a two-edged sword. The moment we say, I'm going to restrict something, let me tell you what is going to happen to my business. If India says data restriction law, you can't take this out, you can't do this stuff, and the countries and the companies I deal with say the same thing. Immediately today, post-COVID, I'm going to share this example. Post-COVID, here's what happened. Everybody that we had everywhere in the world, we had to fly them back into India. Many people are not sitting, our company is in Chennai, most people are not in Chennai. They are sitting in Vijayawada, Madurai, wherever. I mean, literally all over India. They're all working on a VPN with their computer and their laptop at home, and they're helping some of the largest companies in the world run their banks and their systems. And they all have access to data. The security issues out here, but we put in place those security issues. Literally the largest employer in a country like Myanmar would not run if not for Crayon. If India introduces that restriction and says, you know, nobody else can come in and do this, it doesn't take long for another company to do that, for another country to do the same. And then we land up in a situation where I have to say, as a company, I've got to go and do something in Myanmar, in Brazil, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, in Turkey, in Indonesia. And suddenly, we no longer can be the same power as a company. Take my company, extrapolate it to India, and you will realize the scale of the opportunity and the scale of the challenge that we face. So to me, I love what Vinod said about IP, right? We went through colonization ourselves as a country. Land. What are the four factors of production we talk about? Land, labor, capital, IP. I'm saying within IP, it is data that is the new. The moment you say, and I don't even need to own the data as a country. I need to say, I observe the flow of data. I'm going to make sure that all rights are protected. I'm going to just help you analyze the data, write the AI, make sure you get value from the data. It is like sitting in this country in Singapore and saying that the Straits of Malacca, through which most of the world's trade goes through, just by sitting in that Singapore port and observing the whole trade go through, I've created probably one of the most prosperous countries in the world. We need to take the same approach in India. We need to say to everybody, let your data flow through India. And I will let your other things access it, because I will actually create the most fantastic way in which your data is protected no matter where you're from. We can see it, but our people can add value to the data. So I have a very strong view that we should not be putting down barriers. Putting down barriers post the First World War through the 1930s is what led to the Second World War. The trade wars should not just be about the flow of goods and services.
2 more minutes.
You should be careful. It should be about the flow of data. So, so I have a strong view that I think there's a golden opportunity and moment for India as far as data and AI is concerned. The second point, and I'll just very quickly take 1 minute on this, Vineet, is this idea of entrepreneurship. I think for far too long, entrepreneurship, especially in the last, not for far too long, for the last 4 years, entrepreneurship has all become about valuation. It should always have been about value creation. If I create value for my customers, for my employees, my investors automatically make money. This whole game has become about unicorns. By definition, a unicorn doesn't exist. So people who made the unicorn must have done something that is not quite there. And I'm only going to say this because not every business in the world is meant to be a unicorn. This dream that you're chasing is not necessarily the case. We should build sustainable companies that grow fast, yes, blitz scale, possibly, but grow profitably, provide good jobs, and not something where people just wake up one morning and say, oh, somebody gave me $100 million of capital, I hired 1,000 people. Tomorrow the capital guy, the investor is saying, don't do it, I'm going to fire 900 people. That's not value creation, that doesn't help the economy. Entrepreneurs need to be looking at saying, how do I create value and create sustainable business? And when you chase valuation, we get a lot of bad stuff as entrepreneurs. Look at Wirecard in Germany, complete fraud. Luckin Coffee in China, complete fraud. Look at Uber, toxic environment that they created till they replaced the CEO. So this is what happens. Sometimes when we chase the wrong things as entrepreneurs, which is the valuation model, we tend to create businesses that are negative. When we chase value creation, we chase the right thing. We create value for customers, we create value for employees, and therefore we create value for our investors. And I strongly believe that entrepreneurs need to kind of refocus themselves in this post-COVID era to do that kind of, to go back to value creation and not valuation. So Vineet, I'm going to hand this back to you. I'm not going to take all the time.
And I sometimes, feel, I used to ask myself when I was a student that why do we have to go and attend seminars or workshops, and when there's B school, our dean used to tell me. And I used to say, sab to wahi baat karte hain, fir kyun sunna hai? But the importance of sitting in a webinar and listening this, even after 3 decades of passing out of the B school, is understood when you have voices which are diagonally opposite to what you think or even writing. My book, if you read, it talks about sovereignty. I talk about putting the Great Wall. But then with
By the way,
perspective,
I'm
when
going to
you
read
listen
your
to
book because I'm
everybody,
going to find out what you have to say, Vineet, on this topic.
yeah. So when you listen to everybody's perspective, then you say that after the thing, and I'm sure when I go out of this conference, I'm going to be more enlightened, will be wiser person than when I entered this. And I'm very happy. I'm going to introduce the last and the fourth speaker, Sunil Gupta. He's a co-founder and CEO of QNU Labs, if I pronounce it properly, which is first in the quantum resilient. He's into data security products. He's into solutions. During his last very long professional set, he has worked with C-Dot, Huge Softwares, Ultron, Symphony, Telica. The list is big. He has given a lot of value addition. And I'm sure people would like to understand from him the challenges which the 5G environment is bringing, and also opportunities. See, one thing we'll have to remind, we all are good people, we are sharp minds. We are here to understand the challenges, also here to create opportunity. Whether it is invert data or an open data, whether it's the business is to be done by A company or a B company, there has to be an opportunity created after this particular conversation. We had somebody who was sitting as an MD of Krish. She knew what is tomorrow. She was the person who would award contracts. And we have these entrepreneurs who came out with fantastic solutions. There are two ways. One, the person who sits in the buyer organization decides what to buy, or she can also get educated by this talented CEOs who are here today to speak. And one more CEO, Sunil Gupta, if you can take, it's now right now 4:56. If I can request you 5 minutes, I'll remind you, and then maybe you can wind up in 2 or 3 minutes after the 5 minutes call has been given. Sunilji, if you can come up.
Thank you, Vineet, and thank you everyone for giving this opportunity. And all the speakers before me had been super, and I learned a lot from all of them. So what I'm going to talk about is a new area which is called quantum technology, and it's new for us. 4 years ago, first time we heard about it, and but then today what I want to share with you is a convergence of few events, a passion, unfulfilled desire that some of us entrepreneurs had, and then an opportunity that we saw for India and for all of us. So I'll take you back to 2016, early 2016 March, when the two events happened. One is that India decided to become digital economy, right? Because we were cash-based economy, and then demonetization happened, and then India decided that if we really want to grow and really connect the billion people, then it is very important that that we have to use and leverage digital channels, and that is where Prime Minister started Jan Dhan Yojana. Millions of accounts were created, and so on, right? So we realized that at that point of time that if India really has to succeed, as some of the other panelists have echoed, then what we're talking about is digital economy, right? And digital economy cannot be, there's no digital economy without digital trust, right? So we said, oh, there is an opportunity as well as a role for us to play, where we, while everybody else is focused on mining data, building AI, big data analytics, and other applications to exploit, or I would say use data so that they can create better insights for consumers, better insights for enterprises, and create larger value. People are going to miss a very important aspect, which is the cybersecurity, right? How data security. And we felt that the data security is going to crumble. The cybersecurity infrastructure is going to crumble, which we are already seeing. So thus we said, why not we look at this aspect? But we also knew that at that time that the current technologies were unable to sustain the cybersecurity requirements, and I will explain that in a little later. And the second trigger that happened at that time, that China had demonstrated an experiment where they showed a video conference call connecting three cities through a satellite, which is Beijing, Shanghai, and Austria, a city in Austria, Vienna. The difference in that video conference was that it was a quantum encrypted call. So quantum encrypted call means that the quantum technology says that if you encrypt your data using quantum tech, then it cannot be eavesdropped. Nobody can actually reverse engineer it or break it, right? It's an unhackable, unconditional security. So it had obviously made India worried that that China, which what it means is that they can look at our data, we can't look into their data, right? And we know that, as Suresh said, everybody is looking at everybody's data, right? There's no secret, right? And people break into, some people just look at the data, somebody break into the data. You'll be surprised that every few months I get a request, I will not tell from whom, and I'm called and given some terabytes of data and asked to break the encryption, right? So so that's the way, there's a world we live in, right? Whether it's a CIA, NSA, or it's a RAW or IB, or whatever you call, everybody is doing that, right? So, but quantum cryptography meant that there's a technology that is unhackable, unbreakable. So principal scientific advisor to Prime Minister reached out to us, one of our co-founder, and said, hey guys, can you do something about it? Can India build a technology? And to be honest with you, some of us who had done 4 or 5 technical technology revolution in India, starting from banking revolution in early 80s to telecom revolution in C-dot in late 80s, to a wireless revolution in India in 90s, and a number of other things and AI one, I did that in 2016. So we felt that this is one technology where India can actually be at par with the world, because it was just come up. We had the capability, because we were actually, see, half of the race is won when you are early enough, right? And we felt that we are actually early enough, and we felt that we will not only do this, we will also take the responsibility that how do we take India forward in this technology. So 3 or 4 of us came together, put our own money, and we said that if we go and ask somebody money, they will not going to give it to us, because this is something unproven, right? And I will go back to an entrepreneur, we call it in deep tech, and so we call it tough tech. So we talk about 4 steps: proof of science, proof of tech, proof of business, and proof of scale. So we said, a lot of people don't have to do proof of science, right? They just build tech and then they go forward, right? In our case, it was a proof of science as well. And we have a quantum physicist, right? With us, one of our co-founder. So we said, we need to understand quantum physics, what is there. So we said, until unless we do proof of science and proof of tech, and even some small level of proof of business, we are not going to go and raise money, because we don't want people to come in and discourage us, right? And we went ahead and spent our money, and we within 3 years, right? No company in the world has done that. There's other company who's the biggest competitor that actually took 20 years to do that. And within 3 years, we built India's first and the only quantum cryptography product. We're very proud, because some of us spent our life working for India from C-dot and a number of other companies. And our passion has always been to put India into the roadmap of technology, right? Global roadmap. And we felt that quantum cryptography, we can do that. And we're very proud to say that today we have managed to put India's name. So all the reports that come out in quantum cryptography, we get placed along with the top 4 companies in the world. And some of the work that we did, we went to defense. I won't be able to disclose a lot of information here, but we are actually transforming the Indian defense, where Indian defense uses a manual courier, manual cipher. And today it is sent through trains, in a trunk the guards carry to the distant part of the world, distant part of the India. And it takes almost a month to distribute that key. And thus you can't change the encryption key very fast, right? Because it's inherent inefficiency there. And now using our technology, we are actually transforming the encryption key in the real time to the distant part of India, right? Which means that there's a huge amount of saving for India, as well as in a wartime, this could be a game changer, right? Because now you can change your key every second, encryption key, which we were changing every month earlier, right? So we felt very proud, because when we set up the company, we had 3 goals. One was we will put India into the global map of quantum. We wanted at least one company because we felt other than IT, India lost almost every other technology opportunity that we had. Second one was that we wanted to feel that Indian defense is not using Israeli product or a US product or somebody else. And we wanted that to happen. And I will tell you, I can't forget the day when we did a first field trial in a defense. A lieutenant colonel who was there, and he started crying. And he said that he never thought that he was about to retire in another year. He told us, and we also started crying. He said he never thought that in his lifetime there is a day he will ever be using an Indian technology in the defense ahead of other countries. And that was a great moment for us. We felt that as Suresh said, it's not about valuation. We were not chasing that. We were chasing value creation, and we felt that that this is what real entrepreneurship for us was. And we are still in the 4th year of our journey. Nobody wants to give us money still, right? And so we continue to raise grants and loans, and but not given up. People are advising us still that, hey, go to US, you'll raise money, but we're resisting as much as we can, right? Leaving that apart, this is a great technology, and I will just spend 2 minutes on telling the greatness of this technology. And this, because if you see all our classical cryptography is all about computational cryptography. What it means is today the public key cryptography that we use, it is a very large subprime number. It cannot be broken. It cannot be, you can't factorize that. We call it a hard mathematical problem. It cannot be solved by current computers, right? Because they don't have enough power. But now we have a quantum simulator and our quantum computers. I don't know whether all of us realized that in October 2019, the world moved from classical world to a quantum world. That today we have quantum computers available that can beat the best of the conventional computer. So we said, so the idea was that then the quantum computers have come, and now they can break this current public key cryptography in few minutes. So which means that all our data that is protected today by public key cryptography is stand exposed, right? We have shown people breaking RSA 2048 in 45 minutes, right, on quantum simulator. So just imagine what will happen when the scalable quantum computers will come. So the idea was that if you use quantum, so quantum has 2 principles called entanglement and superposition. So in our conventional world, we can either have 0 or 1. And in quantum computing, we have 0 and 1 at the same time. And we use that. And because we put them into a quantum state, just think about quantum state, and as an analogy is like a mermaid, right? Nobody has seen a mermaid, which is a quantum state of woman and a fish. The quantum principle is that moment you observe a photon in a quantum state collapses. So that's the reason nobody has seen mermaid. You either see a fish or a woman, right? So as a crude example of a quantum state, and we have done quantum physics and electronics to build a product that actually can put a channel, right, between 2 bodies, which could be two companies or 2 entities that could be 100 kilometers apart, and we create a quantum channel. Any information that we share in that channel is actually one quantum state. And the eavesdropper, if anybody eavesdropper or malware tries to copy that data, it actually collapses, right? The quantum channel, and we come to know about that there is a malware sitting there. So that's what we are able to do is we are able to solve. So I'm very fond of movies, and I bring a lot of concepts there.
We have crossed the 5-minute mark. So another 2 minutes for you, sir.
I will close in 2 minutes. So if you know the Superman movie, the Superman came from a planet called Krypton. Now he had a powers, but the powers were not useful if he remained in Krypton planet. He came to Earth, and then he could use that powers that he had, and he could actually create a huge difference to the Earth, people on Earth, right? Because then that power could solve the problems. Similarly, what we did is we went to quantum world. We brought 2 powers from there, and those powers, when we use it in our conventional world, we are able to solve phishing problem and malware problem. And because of that, we use quantum encryption and quantum randomness. Those are the 2 powers. And quantum randomness is when you use randomness, which gives 100% entropy, we can actually randomize the data that goes into the transit or internet or cloud, and then malware or the phishing will never succeed. And then what we create a quantum channel across 100 kilometers of distance, and then we can very securely transfer the data or the encryption key. So that is where the power of technology comes in solving problems that are otherwise not possible. And we are happy that now our efforts led to the quantum mission that was declared in February in the budget, $1 billion. We are very proud to say that we have contributed in the policies, we contributed in some of the areas to do that. And now we have taken a challenge on ourselves to train 5,000 people in quantum space, because in today India has about 200 people and 50 of them are with me, right? So we are now trying to build and trying to take our platform and open source it, so that and make it we have built it a training platform so that we can offer it to India, so that people can actually, students and research students can actually use our APIs to build applications on top of it or get to learn more about quantum physics. So we are tying up with universities with only the intention of giving it as a tool, our dedication, and there can't be a better time than very close to the Independence Day. In fact, when we did our first product launch last year, it was on the 15th of August when DRDO head was visited us in Bangalore, actually did a cutover of the project. So I'll stop here. So if any question, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
So when you listen to these people, you start thinking more and more, and then there are inquisitive, there are curiosity which comes up. And one thing, we are still in that COVID challenge. We have always seen that vaccines have saved humanity. Vaccines were always been invented, and there were processes which were set across the world. It was agreed that somebody would invent, do trials, A trial, B trial, N number trial. As I don't come from the medical field, I would not like to use the terminology properly. But one of the things, element of the vaccine was it is to take time. And that time was because the tests were done over the time, over different diaspora, different people, different type of things. And then the results would be analyzed. And once it is assured that the results are better than anything else, then only that vaccine was released. Will quantum physics, will quantum technology, computing help reduce this cycle in vaccine, and will help us? Because this is the immediate question: how do we go out of the house? Because all of us were always there in the field, and this is the first time I think we have spent so much of time with the family. And thanks that we are on webinar, we are not having a mask, else Suresh is showing me the hand that every one of us would have done it. So will this technology help us? And I have a supplementary question to that. When you have this kind of capabilities where you can zip the time, what is essentially when you have this kind of artificial intelligence or quantum technology, you can zip the time. Will is it also possible that you can zip time of financial data which is available of the client? You can predict what is his going to be purchasing power and then enslave him over the period. So these two questions go together. One, will it really help us to zip the time so that humanity can be served? And two, can this technology be used by people who have ulterior motives to forecast what is your buying pattern and then create artificial shortage, or to push things to you by creating artificial blockades, be it with treaties, be it be policies, or be it be push. These two questions, if you can help us, Sunilji. You were the last speaker, so I thought I should give you the first question.
Thank you very much. So right, I only talked about the dark side of a quantum computer. The bright side of quantum computer is far more superior, far more beneficial to the humankind. Quantum computers by its nature, because of the entanglement and superposition principle, they can actually crunch the whole compute time very, very fast. Just to give you an idea, the largest computer is exascale, which is coming out, which is billions of processing that it can do it per second. Quantum computers are 1,000 times faster than that, right? So that even the quantum computer we have today in the world is faster than most of the computers put together in the world we have. So the answer is yes, it will. That is the reason if you see most investment that is going in the world, venture investment is going in the quantum computing, right? And the top 10 companies in the world, Intel, IBM, Microsoft, Google, you see anyone, they all are working on this. Because like example, what is said is, world was polarized, right? In early 50s and 60s, the whole world was polarized around nuclear technologies, right? And US and Russia. because that gave a very unfair advantage to to those companies. Similarly, the people are saying that the world will get polarized have and have nots around quantum computing, and today the leaders are US and China, right? So the fact of the matter is that when quantum computers come up, they will be able to solve, basically there's a simulation problem. If you're able to simulate a human body, then they will be able to get a vaccine very fast. And that's the reason the D-Wave, which is the largest quantum computer available today, is offered by them free of cost to the scientists. Yes, so it will definitely help. All optimization problems will be solved by quantum computers. So that's the reason they're getting so popular. Definitely there. And yes, so the AI, if you see, the biggest challenge for AI is two. One is the lack of entropy, right? AI algorithms need randomness, right? They need random numbers, and thus quantum random numbers can help them do that, so they never entropy starved, right? And the second thing is that you need a extreme compute power to run complex AI algorithms, right? So we believe that quantum computers are going to help that. Today, one of the companies that we know is setting up probably world's first platform where they will offer super computing as well as super quantum computer environment platform and lease. And they're also offering AI algorithms on top of it. So you can actually take AI algorithm as a service, and then you can get random numbers, and you can actually run some of the experiments and tests that you want to try to do. If any pharma company wants to do that, they can actually do it, right? So answer to your question is yes, all three.
Good. Sureshji, there is a question from Air Vice Marshal Sinha. Is it possible to observe data without the company letting you know the data flow? What he essentially means probably is if the companies, if the firms or the service provider which gives you service, they check the data and the data has been flowed from one entity to another entity, one geography to another entity. Is it possible for law enforcement agencies to observe the data if they don't want to help you?
So this is really, I think, more in the area of data security, in terms of how much can you observe the data when it flows. I think if you look at today's technology, most communication apps tend to have end-to-end encryption. And end-to-end encryption really means that while data can flow, everybody in India uses WhatsApp, is the biggest user in the world of WhatsApp. Government servants use WhatsApp to discuss things, but nobody can really, even WhatsApp cannot observe what is going on. So it is absolutely not possible, provided the end-to-end encryption is there. Now, however, and I want to qualify this, it really depends upon the intent of the company and whether they have reserved a backdoor key. Every country in the world wants a backdoor key. And we've all read about all of this stuff where the US government has pressured Apple to say, give me the backdoor key. And Apple has said very clearly, I will not write code that gets a backdoor key, because the moment you write that code, then you can't stop everybody else from getting access to it, right? So end-to-end encryption works on, I think Vinod used the word trust. If I claim that it's there and I'm actually saying it's end-to-end encryption, everybody has to trust that it's end-to-end encryption. The moment any of these companies say there's a backdoor key, I think anybody can then burrow into it. I do believe that most of the US companies that say they don't have a backdoor key, don't have a backdoor key. But I cannot say the same about China, and I don't want to be nationalistic about this, but I cannot say the same because I just don't know. So I think as long as it's end-to-end encrypted, the company will not be able to observe it.
You pointed out to Vinod, and Vinod, you can put light on, these are the challenging times. Things are changing. Humanity is changing. The way we live the values are changing. The way we see challenges. You and I had an interesting discussion about honeypots and how do you create thoughts and how do you create values, and that can help your customers, that can help organization. We have people who would like to understand that, to know that their organizations can be secure. There are also people who are from law enforcement or the policymakers who would like to know how that operation or the exercise which you do will help. Can you put it in 2 or 3 minutes, the entire.
Sure. What as a we were looking at from the IoT standpoint and IoT and OT standpoint, we were looking at what is a vulnerability, and we have at this point in time have a network of almost close to about 5,000 devices in about 60 locations across the globe, and this infrastructure is being attacked about 5 million times a day. Now, this is generating a lot of threat intel for us, which we are now sharing that with specific research institutions in Singapore, across the world. And this honeypot is where probably a lot of threat intel is being generated around this thing. So which is helping us to prevent some of these things. But Viniji, on your earlier question, I think it is an important aspect of this trust. Now, I think it's a good question that while I believe that, it's all about a value creation, right? I mean, if somebody comes to me, as Suresh mentioned, and said that, look, this is the value that I'm going to offer, can you share the data? It's up to me to share it or not, but there should be that clarity on the value creation should be clear. But from a technology, there's a new technology which encryption, Sunil will know much about this, called homomorphic encryption. Now, this encryption, what it is, it's in the early stages. What it helps us is that once you encrypt with this encryption, then you would be able to analyze and derive algorithms out of it without decrypting it, right? So now this is a great way for us to leverage AI more and more. I'm sure that this is early stages of the technology. We are carefully looking at it because we believe that as we have started playing in the digital trust space, we want to ensure that from a technology perspective, we create something which gives the comfort. And for sure, the data should be looked at, because that's the only way you can create models and solve this big institutional voids. So to answer your question, I think the first is on the honeypot, we have taken the first step, got the partners globally to ensure that we enhance that honeypot network globally, so that we will get to know some of the zero-day vulnerabilities much more than what some of the other let's say the negative guys come to know about it. We are finding a lot of interesting things as a part of this whole exercise.
Vineet, may I add one clarification to what I said, because I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, please.
That I want to. So one of the reasons why the WhatsApp founder walked out on Facebook after taking $19 billion and spending 2 years trying to build it is because Mark Zuckerberg wanted him to relax the encryption so that Facebook could observe the metadata so that they could serve advertising. Now, the moment you make that little relaxation, and I think Sunil and Vinod are more technically qualified. By the way, to the audience, I failed statistics and maths all the way through college and school. God is taking revenge on me by making me do this for a living now. But the moment you relax it even slightly, then the gates are open. Then there are enough people who know how to go in and make things through that. And the guy, the WhatsApp founder, Brian Acton, left because he said, I'm not going to permit advertising on both. Because to permit advertising, I have to relax something about the data. So I think that's an important point, right? You either are doing it fully or you're not doing it at all. Now, Apple refuses to take some of your end user data to the cloud for the same reason, because the moment it's in the cloud, there are all kinds of other things that people can access. So they do a lot of the AI on the device by creating a different thing, they call it differential privacy. So there are different ways in which people are solving this end-to-end encryption, and how do I run AI on a limited data set without actually, like Google and Facebook, putting everything on the cloud and creating this vast storage of knowledge that, who knows? I mean, Trump can pass a law tomorrow morning and say, I'm going to take over that data. It's entirely possible. So I think there's some interesting legal developments out here that are not related to the technology that I wanted to kind of point out.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. Almost, the last 95 minutes we have been talking about technology opportunities. I and Vandanaji, we both come from an organization which has got different type of client. So when Vinod or Suresh or anybody else talks about technology, they keep in mind their customers, their client. And the ROI is very simple. with due respect, when Sunilji works, everybody. So your success or failure is known by your balance sheet, the top line and the bottom line. Unfortunately or fortunately, I, Vandana ji, and in the last session there was AVM Sinha, who is also a part of the audience right now. Three of us, we had a different set of clients, different sets of customers, and these customers we cannot calculate in top line or bottom line. We can only quantify them in satisfaction, happiness, and a smile. Vandana ji had clients which are more than 23 million per day. 2.3 crore people who travel in passenger, and there are also people who may not buy tickets. She used to have 15,000 trains running, locomotives running across 8,000 stations. If you put the total kilometers of the road, of the rail track, it would take a circumference of the entire globe, that kind of thing. And her customers are who? The customers are who earn 100 rupees per day or maybe less than that. And they may be retired people, they may be not adding to the GDP, and she has to serve them. And when we both were there on the committee, I was part of the team, she was the MD. The focus was something called as measurables were happiness, measurables were how do we reduce accidents, measurables were how do we increase G2C, the government to citizen services, and use of geospatial technology, use of IoT was always emphasized. How do we go forward? We introduced one part in the last 3-4 minutes. I'll take a liberty as the moderator to speakers. We introduced technologies which helped the satisfaction when we introduced social media to understand grievances of the citizens. And we told them, you don't have to write on that sheet of paper, which will then go to the station master to the car sheds, and then your problems will be solved 24 days post your travel, and you will never know whether a problem was addressed or not. Now we told them, please go on social media, criticize us. Immediately, we would take that up. And you would have seen in the last 4 years, we get more than 7,000 tickets, complaints, grievances per day. We hear them, we do listen to them. We solve the problems. We have broke that into 3 parts, A, B, C. C, which can be done immediately while the travel is on. And there have been excellent examples. We have done jobs which were not supposed to be our job, like providing milk to a lacting mother, a child, which was never a job of railway. But that was done because there was a grievance, there was a genuine help being called for, and the help would be delivered. We also have seen serious problems of adulteration of food being solved because somebody rose that. And you know, we feel happy when you embrace us on social media, because the moment you raise that question, you embrace us, we take that as to be feedback, immediately rush up. Then there are B type of problems which we cannot solve when you are traveling, because that needs a resting of the coach. When it reaches the last station, you fix this gate, you may fix the bolts which are serious in nature, and there may be types of problem which requires budgetary provision, which requires serious maintenance issues which cannot be done in without having a budgetary provision maintained. This was only possible because the mindset of the people who were sitting there was to take feedbacks, grievances as to be a challenge and opportunity to improve these services. And see the customer. My customer is so rich that he may sometimes not be able to afford his food. He is not a CEO of a company which runs thousands of crore rupees or millions of dollars, but that customer, that client of mine is my God, and we serve them. And we use technology, whether it is geospatial technology to tell the perfect positioning of the train, because we didn't want to use crowdsourcing platforms like Google to give these services. We took help of ISRO so that we can tell our client, the God, that you know your train is going to reach in the next 3 minutes or 4 minutes. That kind of problem. IoTs have been installed at various places to have a predictive maintenance system. You all are sharp mind. You all are talented people who are there and the part of the panel, and also the people who are here in the audience. I know many names who are there part of the audience who have better understanding of technology than me and Vandana ji. You have delivered solutions which even I, Vandana ji, or Sinha Saab cannot envisage. My request to you is use these platforms. Communicate to us. You can communicate to IMC, to Million Minds, to Seek Yes, to your contacts, the way you have been invited here. Tell us, educate us. If you remove our darkness, if you remove our shadows, only then we will be able to deliver better to the citizens of this country. My customer, who is very important customer, the Antodaya. I am impressed by a philosopher, Mr. Upadhyay, D. Upadhyay, who told that Antodaya, the last man in the sequence, who cannot even afford 2 meals, is the most important customer, and I serve that customer. And I cannot serve that customers if the audience who is listening right now, who are talented than me and Vandana ji, Don't tell us what is the solution which can remove the unhappiness, which can remove the pain, which can increase the lifespan, which can decrease the pain of the human being, which can reduce the need of the medicines. So this particular discussion of reimagining entrepreneurship in the post-COVID era, it's not purely about talking about the subject which has been given to us about company, but this is a subject which will help us to bring our thinking cap, how we can handhold each other, bring in technological intervention which will increase lifespan of Indians, which will decrease the need of medicine. If my next generation can live better than me, I'll be most happy. And I thank you all to give me an opportunity to moderate such a talented panelist whom I have been always listening, because they gave me the ideas how do I participate in policy making in the current discussion. Who better than Sanjay Chakrabarti will be the ideal person to thank, give the formal vote of thanks. He's a talented person. I would request Shelby to take over from me, and then Sanjay ji can give the vote of thanks. And but before I leave this stage, once again, I fold my hand and request everybody who is listening to me. None of us will be able to serve this nation if you don't educate us. We are the most uneducated, most unviable people, non-technical people. So please educate us. What are the opportunities which can serve this nation better? And also tell us if there are policies which are hindrances. We will try our best to communicate to the people or decision maker. We don't know whether we will be able to influence them to change the policies, but I can assure you one thing: we will not leave stones unturned. When I and Vandana ji wanted to introduce the grievances handling system in railways, people told me, "Sir, पागल है, यहाँ पे grievances लिखने के बाद में साल भर तक पढ़ी नहीं जाती है, solution क्या लेंगे? We don't even read these grievances for one year, and you want to give it on social media." And believe me, that is when, if I close my eyes today, I will not be unhappy that I lived on this earth, but I gave a solution through technology. So over to you, Shelby, and thank you everybody to listening to me.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. And it was a wonderful session as usual, and the way you conducted is amazing. So as we come to the end of the session, may I request Mr. Sanjay Chakrabarti, founder Million Minds, to conclude this session with a vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Chakrabarti.
Thank you, Shelby. And on behalf of IMC, Center for Knowledge Sovereignty, and Million Minds, we would like to thank the esteemed panelists who have given us very, very insightful and knowledgeable thinking, and made us think on a whole lot of new ideas, whole lot of it's a paradigm shift in terms of thinking that they have brought in. Whether it's Suresh's contribution, Vandana ji, Sunil Gupta. Sunil, good I interacted with you and learned so much from you. Vinod Kumar ji, and obviously the way Paula initiated the entire session. And special thanks to Mr. Vineet ji, such a knowledgeable person, still so humble. You are wonderful, Vineet ji, the way you have carried the previous session as well as this session. Thank you to you, sir. And the esteemed audience who have been, I'm sure they would have got quite a lot of learning and insight from this power-packed panel. And obviously they will carry some thoughts for back home. If any of you got any further questions you want to discuss more, we as IMC, Million Minds, or Center for Knowledge Sovereignty are all available to you. Connect with us. We will connect you back to the panelists, and you can continue your discussions. And I'm sure that even the panelists would not mind sharing their thoughts further with you on this intellectual plane. And our endeavor with this basis, our endeavor will be to continue with this kind of discussions further. We have this entire webinar. It's a 6-part series, the 4 more to come in. Again, this will be similar kind of exciting discussions which will be there. And we hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion. You will come for the next session, which is going to happen at the same time on next Friday. Hope to see you guys there and enjoy. And we are all there. IMC is all there to serve and bring much more knowledge to you on this field. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your participation and making it such a wonderful interactive session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, Suresh.
Bye.
Bye, Sanjay. Bye, Vandana. Bye, Vinod. Bye, Sunil. Bye, Vineet.
Bye.